Hi everyone, I'm Michael. On this channel I normally review books, but in this video I've decided to take a foray into talking about one of my favourite sports, League of Legends. In this series I'll be going through and discussing previous World Championships from 2013, Season 3, through to 2020, Season 10. I'm aiming to get this all done by Worlds this year. These videos should function quite well as podcasts, I think, as I'll be mostly talking, though I will be tossing results on the screen for you to look at. I'll be getting those results from the LoL Fandom Wiki, which I'll put the link to in the description. I'll try to take you through some of the dominant narratives and interests at the time, from my perspective, as well as talk you through results of each match and what they meant. I'll also make some recommendations for best matches from that year's Worlds that you might want to check out, and occasionally I'll let you know where some of the players ended up afterwards. So, let's jump into the Season 3 World Championship, way back in 2013. I was quite a young lad in 2013, so my understanding of the community narratives isn't as robust as it will be for some of the later Worlds. With that said, one of the big narratives of 2013, as it has been every year, was NA versus EU, and specifically Fnatic versus Cloud9. Nobody was particularly hyped about Lemon Dogs or Vulcan. People were quite hyped about Korea, but there was also a lot of faith in Royal Club coming out of China. Hope for Najin's Sword was relatively limited, as they hadn't done very well towards the end of the tournament in Korea. SKT, on the other hand, was seen as a tournament favourite because of their dominant performance in OG in Korea. There were also some not so vague rumours about an amazing mid laner from Korea called Faker, and people were also starting to talk about Uzi from China, from Royal Club. In addition, there was a little bit of limited hype around the Gamania Bears, because TPA, obviously from the same region, Taiwan, had taken the Summoners Cup the previous year, so people were wondering what the Gamania Bears could do. Riot even published a video called Here Come the Gamania Bears, which turned out to be quite funny considering how they would do in the tournament. So, the tournament kicked off in Culver City, California, with 10 games on the first day of groups, and after that, 6 games were played each day of groups until the final day where another 10 were played. So, after the dust settled of groups, we had the following results. Group A was led by a tie between SK Telecom T1 with a score of 7-1 and OMG, oh my god, with a score of 7-1. So those were 2 qualifying teams from Group A, and then the eliminated teams were Lemon Dogs with a score of 3-5, TSM with a score of 2-6, and GGEU, Gaming Gear EU, with a score of 1-7. And then our qualifying teams from Group B were Fnatic with a score of 7-1, and Gambit with a score of 5-3. And then our eliminated teams were Samsung Ozone with a score of 5-3. They lost a tiebreaker to Gambit. Team Vulcan with a score of 3-5. And finally, Minisiki with a score of 0-8. So, a couple of interesting things to note is like that tiebreaker that I talked about. So, Gambit and Samsung Ozone actually went 1-1, but then the tiebreaker clinched it for Gambit. TSM notably went home early and did not advance. The groups were SKT, OMG, Fnatic, and Gambit. And they would be joined in the quarters by the pre-qualified teams of Royal, the Gamania Bears, Najin Black Sword, and Cloud9. And that would complete the first stage of our knockout bracket, the quarterfinals. So yeah, let's jump into the quarterfinals. Now, to note that these were best of 3s, as the quarterfinals weren't played as best of 5s at the time. So the first series is Fnatic, or that I will cover, is Fnatic versus Cloud9. Which Fnatic won. The score was 2-1, but the series wasn't actually that close. Cloud9 managed to clinch a win, but really it was a very Fnatic favoured series. Notably, this was Cloud9's first international series as an organisation. Next up, SKT would beat the Gamania Bears 2-0. This was a slightly closer series than the score would suggest, but ultimately it did go the SKT's way quite clearly. Royal beat OMG in another 2-0. And this was largely off the back of some insane plays from Uzi. His Vayne in the series was absolutely spectacular. And of course, there was some lovely clean Z play from the mid laner Whites. And then in our final series of the quarterfinals, Najin Black Sword would take down Gambit 2-1. And this series included an absolutely insane Baron steal by Watcher's Nunu, where he would flash over the wall, stare at the Baron for a second, and then just chomp it right in front of Gambit. So, our qualifying teams into the semi-finals would be SKT, Najin Black Sword, Royal, and Fnatic. So the semi-finals commenced with SKT versus Najin. This was a razor-close series, but Faker was able to finish off the series for SKT with a beautiful shockwave, which took the final team fight, the game, and clinched SKT a spot in the World Finals. And I can't emphasize enough how close the series was. This was the true finals of the World Championship, which is interesting because obviously this shows a lot of the caliber of the teams here, in the sense that these were both Korean teams just competing. And of course, It was a very close series, like I said. So the other semi-final was Fnatic with Royal versus Royal, which started 0-2 down for Fnatic. However, they were able to clinch one game. Um, However, the last game would go to Royal, despite the best effort of Puzu's Varus, where he actually got a quadra kill in that last game, but it just was not enough to clinch it. So this would mean that SKT would face off with Royal Club in the finals. So before this match, there was a lot of hype, as this was seen as kind of one of the deciders for which would be the preeminent region in the world. A lot of people were favouring Korea, however, some of the casters were not so Korea favoured. Monte Cristo famously tried to give away tickets to the SKT hype train, but none of the other casters would accept those tickets. However, those casters would be proven wrong, as the SKT hype train would run straight over RNG in a very clean 3-0 series. So that would mark the conclusion to the 2013 World Championship, with SKT taking the victory. So this was the first World Championship win for a Korean team. However, it would not be the last, as they would continue those winning ways for the next 4 years, all the way up until 2018. So some great games that you might want to watch from this year's World Championship would be TSM versus SKT, their second game from groups. Just had some insane Riven plays from Faker, and it's really fun to go back and watch some of these Riven plays, just to see the master at work, so to speak. And speaking of the master at work, you might want to also check out Royal versus OMG Game 2 from the quarterfinals, where we just get to see Uzi's Vayne just absolutely styling on everyone. Really, really beautiful stuff. And finally, I would say that if you want to check out Game 3 of the finals, I think that would be really cool, because Game 3 really just is that beautiful conclusion to a World Championship. You get to see the hype of the casters, the hype of the team as they take the Summoners Cup. So I really think the Game 3 is just a fun one to watch, sort of for more storyline purposes than necessarily gameplay. So yeah, that concludes my summary of the 2013 World Championship. I hope you enjoyed.